Welcome to The Debate. How did the Byzantine Empire, the supposed ghost of Rome, manage to stand for 1,000 years? It faced devastating sieges, plague, and internal collapse, surviving against all odds, protected by the legendary Theodosian walls of Constantinople. Its longevity is, I think, one of history's most profound and mysterious phenomena.
It really is, and this history is so complex. We're so glad you're joining us for this because we're diving right into the core of its resilience. Brought to you by the History Detector channel. We want you to share your knowledge in the comments. Your opinion really matters in understanding these exciting and mysterious forces.
Absolutely. I mean, the empire outlived its Western counterpart by nearly a millennium, yet it faced repeated structural collapse. Think about the Nika Revolt, the disaster at Manzikert, right up to the final tragedy of 1453.
So that brings us to our central question. What truly sustained it? Was its incredible endurance a product of deep, systemic, geographic, and fiscal strengths, a structure that was, deliberately built for the long haul?
Or is its survival fundamentally dependent on something else? On visionary, high-stakes imperial leadership and profound ideological transformation, those moments of radical action needed to pull the whole thing back from the brink when the system failed.
Right. And I'll be arguing for the primacy of structure. My position is that the foundation, the geography, Diocletian's administrative playbook, the fiscal core of the East, that's what provided the necessary endurance.
And I'm going to argue that without the decisive transformative acts of will by key individuals and the ideological shifts they brought about, that system would have just crumbled under pressure. After all, systems are only as strong as the leaders who enforce them.
Well, my position is that the East was simply built to endure. Diocletian's reforms, they established a bureaucratic model based on predictable command and standardized revenue. He instituted crucial fiscal reforms, stabilized tax assessments, and critically, tying labor to the land. This was a system that secured the tax base and made state revenue, predictable. And he separated civil and military authority, which limited the power of generals and created a bureaucracy that was resilient enough to outlive some very turbulent reigns.
Okay, but that works in theory. If the foundation was so strong, why did Diocletian's playbook, the Tetrarchy, collapse into civil war almost immediately after he retired? The stability that followed wasn't automatic. It required brute force executive will to create that unity. Systems need pivots.
I'd argue the sheer physical assets of the East gave it an immense advantage that the West just didn't have. The strength was rooted in reliable, defensible wealth. Syria and Egypt funneled cash crops and customs into the imperial accounts, supporting robust urban networks. And of course, Constantinople's location on the Bosporus. It controlled sea traffic like a gatekeeper. Deep harbors ensured logistics could withstand sieges. Grain boats could slip into the Golden Horn even when land routes failed. The West faltered because of weak fiscal depth and the loss of its tax base in North Africa. The East, unburdened by this after 395, could focus its budget efficiently on its own defense.
You're defining success purely by fiscal depth, but that money is meaningless without ideological cohesion. The Constantinian pivot wasn't just political, it was a profound ideological reset. By moving the capital to a new Rome and embracing Christian patronage with the Edict of Milan, Constantine tied the state to a new moral authority, a sacred trust. The focus shifted from the old pagan Roman past to a sacred Christian future. And that spiritual legitimacy was absolutely essential when secular politics faltered. It gave people a reason to endure beyond just paying taxes.
And I would argue those profound ideological shifts were only possible because the underlying administrative and fiscal structure provided a stable vessel for them. Christianity wouldn't have been a unifying force if the empire couldn't reliably feed its capital or pay its armies.
But the system faced multiple near-death experiences where the bureaucracy proved totally incapable of handling the crisis. Look at the Nika Revolt in 532. The court was in a full panic. The Senate, the advisors, they were all urging Justinian to flee to the harbors. The system was about to abandon the city. It was Theodora's raw, resolute demand to stay and fight that saved Justinian's reign. That was a singular intervention by an individual, overriding the systemic impulse to just run.
An internal crisis, yes, but the system absorbed the shock. It showed resilience.
No, the system failed and required a brute force correction. Or consider Heraclitus in the early 7th century. He inherited an empty treasury and faced Persian occupation, including the loss of Egypt's revenue and the capture of the True Cross. The system was bankrupt. Heraclitus didn't rely on bureaucratic rules. He gambled everything on a military offense, personally leading the campaign and fundamentally reorganizing logistics. Contemporary writers called it a miracle. No bureaucracy could have orchestrated that.
Okay, let's move to our first contention then. The founding of Constantinople. Was it an inherent geographic advantage or sheer imperial vision? I maintain that Constantine chose Byzantium because the geography, well, it sold itself. He was formalizing an administrative reality that power had already been shifting eastward to hubs like Nicomedia and Antioch. The control of Black Sea trade, that unparalleled defense potential, these were pre-existing structural realities.
I see why you emphasize the strategic convenience, but I'd frame it differently. I mean, lots of ports offer strategic convenience. What made Constantinople successful was Constantine's deliberate forging of a new identity. He didn't just exploit a location, he intentionally branded it as the center of the Christian Commonwealth. He integrated churches with the state apparatus, the palace, the hippodrome, the courts, in a way Rome never could. This intentional act of fusing imperial authority with a single faith gave the city a cohesion that allowed it to survive sieges, where other cities might have just fallen apart.
That cohesion, that civic energy, had to be protected by viable, long-term military frameworks. And that brings us to the systems that sustain the military.
Sure, but I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because that system was perpetually undermined by corruption and aristocratic power grabs. The great landholding families in Anatolia basically treated provinces like private estates, which weakened central authority.
But that corruption was precisely why the structural innovation of the theme system was so necessary and ultimately successful. Linking soldiers to land tenure reduced fixed costs and ensured local defense. It lowered the central administration's constant military burden and secured the Anatolian core for centuries. It was a structural solution to a structural problem.
I'll grant you the theme system was a genius structural response, but its longevity always depended on emperors who could enforce it against the elite. When the power of the Anatolian aristocracy swelled, the themes became hollow shells. The system only worked again because of leaders like Basil II, the Bulgar Slayer, who used investigations and confiscations to break those families and restore discipline. Without Basil's hard iron, long patience, and will that kept marching, that core would have hollowed out much sooner.
But the system demonstrated resilience independent of Basil II. It survived the chaos of the mid-11th century, 13 emperors in 46 years, precisely because the decentralized nature of the themes meant that chaos in the palace didn't immediately mean losing the heartland. And we have to account for technological assets like Greek fire. This was a systemic technological advantage, a kind of Byzantine secret weapon.
The system gave them a secret weapon, yes?
And that weapon repelled critical Arab sieges in 674 and 717, when personal leadership in the palace was often weak or contested. This was naval deterrence baked right into the administrative structure, and it worked even when the emperor was ineffective.
But even Greek fire was useless if the emperor couldn't ensure the navy was paid and maintained, which requires competent governance. Which brings us to our final point: adaptability and resilience after a crisis.
The empire's resilience stemmed primarily from its administrative machine. I mean, consider Justinian's Codex Justinianus. This didn't just consolidate law, it created a unified, rational framework for the entire state. This meant that even after devastating shocks, like the 541 plague, which killed up to 10,000 people a day in Constantinople, the bureaucracy could adapt. They maintained mint output, standardized procedures, and because the law provided a clear mechanism for property and taxation, recovery was possible. The system absorbed the shock.
That's a nice picture of bureaucratic healing, but I'm sorry, I just don't buy that a legal framework alone saved them from annihilation. That kind of institutional strength should have prevented the systemic collapse of the Fourth Crusade in 1204. That catastrophe, where Venice redirected the crusade because of unpaid Byzantine debt, was a massive failure of diplomacy and fiscal management, rooted in reliance on unreliable Western partners.
That was a betrayal, not a natural disaster.
It was a betrayal rooted in systemic financial weakness and poor political calculation. It proved that systemic weaknesses, exploited by external forces and poor leadership decisions, could override any inherited legal strength. The sack of Constantinople broke the empire's core, its art, its identity. Decades before 1453, the legal system didn't stop that.
And yet, the legal and administrative structures provided the framework for the successor state of Nicaea to eventually restore the empire. The structure provided the concept of continuity, even when the city was lost.
But that restoration was a shadow of its former self. It took the profound personal sacrifice of Constantine XI Palaeologus in 1453, refusing to abandon the city, to make the very end a statement of memory and resolve. His final stand was a singular act of leadership, a choice to embody the imperial role, regardless of the collapsed system around him.
And yet the structure provided the Theodosian walls and the legal justification for him to be standing there in the first place, defending the fiscal and geographic core that Diocletian and Constantine had so strategically established. The foundation afforded him the stage for that tragic final act.
The system gave them the playing field, I agree. But it was decisive leadership, the will to transform, the courage to risk everything, that was required to keep the game going.
From my perspective, the story of the empire is ultimately one of management. Establishing a viable fiscal base, designing an impregnable capital, and deploying administrative frameworks that provided the necessary buffer against constant threats. Structure afforded the time needed to survive.
And I maintain that survival was less a function of automatic stability and more a series of near impossible, specific, and personality-driven decisions. The religious transformation under Constantine, Theodora's steadfastness, Heraclitus' strategic gamble. These acts of will redefine the state when the structures buckled.
It is very clear that the extraordinary resilience of this civilization is a product of both factors: structural strength providing the vessel and leadership providing the necessary fuel for transformation.
We hope this discussion helps illuminate the complex interplay between robust structures and indispensable leadership in the Byzantine Empire. There is so much more to explore in this exciting and intriguing material.
Thank you for listening to The Debate. If you enjoyed this journey through one of history's most mysterious and enduring civilizations, please remember to subscribe to the History Detector channel and activate the bell icon to watch all the forgotten stories as soon as they are released.
The History Detector channel is really grateful for your subscription and your appreciation for what we offer. It truly motivates us to continue. We encourage you to share your knowledge and perspectives in the comments below.